What happens when a beloved Hollywood legend sits down for what should be a simple morning chat, only to face the most hostile interview of his career? It took just 36 seconds for one presenter's outburst to turn a friendly talk show into complete chaos, exposing the harsh reality of what happens when the cameras are rolling, but the smiles fade. The Loose Women's studio buzzed with its usual energy that Tuesday morning. Cameras rolled, lights blazed overhead, and the familiar purple and pink set shone under the bright studio glow. 4 women sat around the iconic table, ready to kick off another episode of daytime television's most talked-about panel show. Denise Welch adjusted her microphone one last time, her jaw already set in that familiar way that told viewers she was spoiling for a fight. To her left sat Ruth Langsford, the show's veteran anchor, calmly shuffling through her notes. Colleen Nolan occupied the third chair, her warm smile hiding the tension she already sensed in the room. At the far end, Janet Street Porter tapped her bright red nails against the desk, her sharp eyes scanning the studio for the first sign of drama. The day's guest was none other than Sean Bean, the legendary actor whose gravelly Yorkshire accent had captivated audiences for decades. From his breakout role as the doomed Boromir in The Lord of the Rings to his unforgettable performance as Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, Bean had built a career playing characters who often met tragic ends. What he didn't know was that today he would face a real-life drama of his own. Bean settled into the guest chair with the calm confidence of someone who had done hundreds of interviews. His weathered face carried that familiar mix of ruggedness and vulnerability that made him a fan favorite. Dressed in a simple black blazer over a gray shirt, he looked every inch the gentleman his supporters adored. Ruth opened the show with her trademark warmth, introducing their guest with genuine enthusiasm. The chat started off smoothly, with Bean talking about his latest project, a gritty crime drama where, once again, his character faced a grim ending. "It seems like you always end up playing characters who die," Colleen laughed, leaning in with curiosity. "Do you ever get tired of such dramatic exits on screen?" Bean chuckled, the corners of his eyes creasing with amusement. "Well, I suppose I've made a career out of it, haven't I? There's something quite freeing about playing characters who aren't afraid to face their fate." The audience laughed along, clearly charmed by his good humor. Even Janet, known for her sharp remarks, seemed genuinely entertained by his easygoing nature. But Denise remained silent, her fingers drumming against the desk in an increasingly restless rhythm. Her colleagues had grown used to her fiery moods, but today something felt different. The tension in the air was like the seconds before a storm breaks. Ruth steered the conversation forward. "Speaking of facing fate, Sean, you've got quite a busy schedule ahead. How do you balance work with family life?" It was a soft, friendly question, the kind guests usually welcomed. Bean smiled warmly. "Family is everything to me," he said with sincerity. "After all these years in the business, you realize it's the relationships off camera that truly matter." The audience murmured approvingly. Ruth nodded with encouragement, Colleen smiled warmly, and even Janet looked impressed. But Denise's expression darkened. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes narrowing as she listened. The other presenters began to notice the shift, exchanging uneasy glances. "That's all very touching," Denise suddenly cut in, her voice sharp enough to slice through Bean's words. "But let's talk about what really matters here." The atmosphere in the studio changed instantly. Bean looked puzzled by her sudden tone. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" he asked politely. "Don't play innocent with me," Denise snapped, leaning forward. "You come here talking about family and relationships. But what about your responsibilities to your fans? What about the promises you've made?" The room fell tense and quiet. Ruth tried to step in. "Denise, perhaps we should—" "No, Ruth," Denise interrupted firmly. "I'm tired of celebrities coming on this show, feeding us rehearsed lines while they ignore the people who made them famous in the first place." The studio fell silent. Camera operators exchanged worried looks as the production team scrambled to figure out what was happening. Bean sat perfectly still, keeping his composure despite the unexpected attack. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," he replied calmly. "If I've done something to upset you, perhaps you could explain." But his measured response only seemed to fuel Denise's anger. Denise's face flushed red as her voice rose loud enough to make the studio microphone squeal. "What I mean," she snapped, "is that you actors think you can just show up, smile for the cameras, and expect everyone to fawn over you. But some of us see straight through it." Colleen's jaw dropped. "Denise, this is completely inappropriate. Sean is our guest. He deserves respect." "Respect?" Denise laughed bitterly. "What about respecting the audience?"
The people who tune in every day expecting honest conversation, not prepackaged publicity. Bean's jaw tightened slightly, but his tone remained even. I came here in good faith, ready to have an honest conversation about my work and my life. I'm not sure what's triggered this reaction, but everything I've said has been genuine. Janet, never one to let drama pass without a comment, tried to lighten the mood. Well, this is certainly more exciting than our usual Tuesday morning chat about the weather. But Denise wasn't in the mood for humor. She turned on Janet with the same venom. This isn't a joke, Janet. This is about integrity, about holding people accountable. What actions are you even talking about? Ruth finally demanded, her professional composure cracking. Sean has done nothing but answer our questions politely and professionally. Your behavior is unacceptable. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether this was real or some elaborate stunt. But the raw emotion in Denise's voice, and the obvious discomfort of everyone else, made it clear. This was no act. For the first time, Sean Bean's patience slipped. His Yorkshire accent grew stronger as he leaned forward. Now listen here. I don't know what your problem is, but I won't sit here and be insulted for no reason. I came here as a favor to the show and not to be ambushed. A favor? Denise shrieked, her pitch rising. You think you're doing us a favor by gracing us with your presence? The arrogance is staggering. Colleen pushed her chair back and stood abruptly, the screech of wood against the floor echoing through the set. That's enough, Denise. This has gone far too far. Sean, I apologize on behalf of the show. This is not how we treat our guests. But Denise shot back with fury, rising to her feet as well. She jabbed her finger at Bean. Don't you dare apologize for me, Colleen. Someone needs to call out this entitled behavior. These celebrities think they can just waltz in here and expect us to bow down. Bean slowly stood up too, his tall frame commanding under the lights. His voice carried quiet authority. That's enough. I don't know what's gotten into you, love, but I won't be spoken to like this. I've been nothing but polite since I walked in. The tension in the studio was unbearable. Then Denise delivered the words that would be replayed endlessly online. Polite and professional? She screamed. You call it professional to show up here unprepared, giving us the same tired answers you've recycled for 20 years? Do you think we're idiots who can't see through your act? Bean's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. What act? I came here to talk about my work, my family, the things that matter to me. If that's not good enough, maybe you should find yourself a different job. The studio gasped in unison. Ruth's mouth fell open. Colleen covered her face in shock, and even Janet was momentarily speechless. Different job, Denise sneered. I've been doing this longer than you've been pretending to be an actor. I've interviewed real stars, people with actual talent, not washed-up has-beens trading on past glory. The insult landed. Bean's expression hardened, and his reply carried the weight of his decades in the business. Washed up? I've forgotten more about acting than you'll ever know about presenting. At least when I do my job, I don't spend my time tearing people down for cheap entertainment. Ruth finally snapped. Denise, stop this right now. You're embarrassing yourself in the show. Sean has done nothing to deserve this. But Denise whirled on Ruth, spitting venom in every direction. Don't you dare tell me how to do my job. Just because you're content to sit there lobbing softball questions doesn't mean the rest of us have to play along with this charade. Charade? Ruth shot back, her mask of professionalism slipping completely. The only charade here is you pretending to be a journalist while behaving like a schoolyard bully. The audience began to murmur nervously. Some even stood to leave, unable to take the tension any longer. Colleen tried one last time. Please, everyone, we're live on television. Think about the message we're sending. The message, Denise snapped, is honesty. The message is that some of us won't be bought and paid for by celebrity handlers and PR machines. That was the breaking point for Bean. His Yorkshire temper finally boiled over. Bought and paid for? You absolute lunatic. Nobody's bought me anything. I agreed to come on this show because I thought it might be a pleasant morning. Or fool me. Human decency? Denise barked back. What about the decency you owe fans when you phone in your performances? When you sleepwalk through roles? My performances? Bean's voice rose now, matching her fury. I've spent 40 years perfecting my craft, working with the best directors and actors in the world. I don't need lessons from someone whose greatest achievement is stirring up daytime drama. Janet's voice trembled as she finally muttered, Maybe we should cut to a commercial break. No break, Denise snapped. Let's finish this now. Let's talk about how you've been coasting on Lord of the Rings fame for decades. Bean's face darkened. Coasting? I've made over 60 films and TV shows. I've worked constantly for 4 decades, taking roles others wouldn't dare touch. If that's coasting, what do you call sitting behind a desk asking questions about other people's lives? The studio atmosphere grew toxic. Ruth glanced desperately toward the control booth for help, but the cameras kept rolling, capturing every second. I call it holding people accountable, Denise shot back. Asking the tough questions your usual interviewers are too afraid to ask. Tough questions? Bean barked a harsh laugh. You haven't asked me a single thing about my work or process. You've done nothing but throw personal insults like a spoiled child having a tantrum. Colleen was in tears now, mascara streaking down her face. Denise, please, this isn't you. Stop, but Denise stood firm. This is exactly who I am. Someone who won't be intimidated by entitled celebrities who think they're untouchable. Bean shook his head, his voice steady despite the storm. Entitled? I've sat here and taken your abuse without walking out. If anyone's acting entitled, it's the one attacking guests for no reason. No reason? Denise's voice cracked. The reason is that I'm sick of fake people giving fake answers to fake questions. I'm sick of the whole rotten system. Ruth rose to her feet now, trembling with anger and dignity. Looking directly into the camera, she said, Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize to our viewers and to our guest. This is not representative of the standards of this show. Don't apologize for me, Denise roared, spinning toward Ruth. I'm the only one here with the guts to tell the truth. Bean looked directly at her, his voice filled with contempt. The truth? The truth is that you're having a breakdown on live television and taking it out on me. For the first time, Denise faltered. Her face crumpled slightly before hardening again. She leaned forward, her voice suddenly deadly calm. Breakdown. I'll show you a breakdown. Get out. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The studio froze. Sean Bean raised his eyebrows in disbelief. I beg your pardon? He asked slowly. You heard me, Denise hissed. Get out of my studio.
Get out of my show.
Get out of my sight, Ruth gasped. Denise, you can't do that. You don't have the authority. I have every authority, Denise snapped. This is my show and I want him gone. The studio erupted into chaos. Audience members whispered, some shaking their heads in shock. The crew didn't know whether to cut the cameras or keep rolling. Bean stared at Denise, his face shifting from disbelief to anger, and finally to pity. His voice was calm but final. Your studio? Your show? Last I checked, this was a team effort. Don't lecture me about teamwork, Denise fired back, though her voice had lost some of its fire. The adrenaline was fading. Just leave. But Bean wasn't done. He stepped closer to the panel desk, towering with quiet authority. You know what the real tragedy is? You had the chance to have an interesting conversation with someone who has spent his life telling stories. Instead, you chose to create a spectacle. Ruth's voice trembled. Sean, please don't judge all of us by this. This isn't who we are. Bean nodded toward her with respect. I know. You've been nothing but professional, and I thank you. He turned to Colleen, who was still dabbing her eyes. And you, love, none of this is your fault. Finally, he looked at Janet. And you at least tried to lighten the mood when things got ugly. Thank you. His kindness toward the other women only made Denise's behavior look worse. She stood there, isolated and deflated, watching as Bean displayed the very professionalism she had accused him of lacking. How touching, she muttered weakly. A little farewell speech for your fans. Bean fixed his eyes on her. His voice was steady, with no anger, only sadness. You know what? I actually feel sorry for you. Whatever's eating you up inside, whatever makes you lash out at people who've done nothing wrong, I hope you find a way to deal with it. But I won't be your punching bag. The compassion in his words seemed to take the fight out of her. Denise's shoulders sagged. I don't need your pity, she mumbled. It's not pity, Bean said quietly. It's concern for another human being. But enough is enough. He unclipped his microphone and began removing the pack from his belt. His calm, deliberate movements carried more power than all the shouting that had come before. Ruth tried desperately one last time. Sean, please, if you'd just give us a moment. No, Ruth, Bean interrupted gently. She's made her feelings perfectly clear. I won't subject myself or you to more of this. Some battles aren't worth fighting. The studio fell into a heavy silence. The audience sat transfixed, watching every motion as Bean placed the microphone on the desk. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, afraid to break the spell. Colleen wiped her tears, whispering softly, I'm so sorry. Bean gave her a small nod, then turned back to Denise one final time. Good luck, love. You're going to need it. With that, he walked off the set, his back straight, his dignity intact. The audience erupted. Some clapped in support, others shouted in disbelief. The chaos on Loose Women had reached its peak, and nothing would ever quite be the same again.